Snap reporting first quarter results. The social media company beating Wall Street estimates for the first quarter. Also, the second quarter sales forecast topping estimates. Joining us now is Third Bridge Global Sector Lead for Technology, Media, and Telecom, Scott Kessler. Whew, Snap is volatile one, Scott. That's all I got to say. I mean, I feel like the whipsaw sort of quarter by quarter and not knowing what to expect. So why did they beat this quarter? I guess I would ask, because it has been pretty uneven here.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a roller coaster to say the least. Look, this is a stock that was over $80 during the height of COVID in September of 2021. So even though we're seeing the stock up over 20% in after hours trading, I mean, I think it was over $16 just earlier this year. So there's been a lot of volatility, but I think most of it over the last few years has really been to the downside. What did they do right in terms of Q1? Look, it's really all been about their kind of re-architecting their advertising technology infrastructure to enable them to basically venture out and capitalize on e-commerce opportunities. So direct response advertising has been kind of the buzzword or the buzz phrase that the company has been indicating for more than a year at this point. And finally, it seems like they are largely completed with the related work. And obviously the uplift in revenues was significant, 21% growth. But when you look at what they delivered the prior quarter, or even what the expectations were for this quarter, I mean, that was a massive beat by all accounts. The question now is, of course, as we were just discussing, how sustainable is what momentum they're trying to create at this point is.
Scott, I was looking at some of their numbers here. So just for instance, average revenue per user in North America is $7.44. That's up from, the estimate was $7.08, and it's up 17% from a year ago. So that's $7.44 in America. Europe, it's $2.04. Rest of the world is $1.13. But the rest of the world is where they got most of their beat on new users, monthly active users, daily active users. Just wondering, in the ad tech scheme, they're building up their ad tech, they're trying to monetize more. Is the game plan to increase some of those average revenue per user numbers around the world?
I mean, that's the hope, right? I mean, essentially and look, this isn't an issue specific to Snap. I think what a lot of companies are finding is user growth is more possible outside of developed markets. But on the other hand, those markets are much harder to monetize. And so that's kind of the tension that you see in these constructs, where the Pareto principle is going to apply, where you have 80% of, say, growth in users coming from overseas, but maybe 80% of the revenue growth coming from the US and developed markets. And so that's something that, frankly, companies are working on. It's not an easy nut to crack, to be honest. And so it's going to require work. But it does seem like Snap finally is moving in the right direction. Whether you look at the overall revenue growth, whether you look at the fact that they're attributing that to direct response and the investments that I alluded to, or the fact that just user gains now have returned to the double digits. You know, all those things are encouraging. I think a lot of folks, as was alluded to earlier, are wondering how sustainable some of this performance is going to be. They alluded to what their expectations are for Q2. Probably not quite as optimistic as the Q1 numbers would suggest, but perhaps they're just being conservative. And I think it's fair to say that people should feel pretty good about the performance and the outlook.
Scott, how much is the sustainability of the performance dependent on what happens with TikTok as well? The company touting the total time spent watching Spotlight, which is its answer to TikTok, was up 125% year over year.
Yeah, well, look, I guess a couple of things on that front. I think Mark Zuckerberg was asked directly about this yesterday in the context of the Meta conference call, and he said what I'm going to say. It's kind of too early to tell. We have no idea what's going to happen with TikTok. I think it's pretty clear that their parent company is going to fight efforts to ban it in the U.S. That makes a lot of sense. But there are so many unknowns here. Nonetheless, I think at the least, what's going on potentially with TikTok is, I think, rightly seen as a potential positive for Snap. I do kind of wonder, though, whether or not as I said, the performance here is sustainable if they have this kind of positive momentum, or if expectations are going to get too optimistic and there are other issues that the company has to deal with. We've heard repeatedly from experts that Snap is in a tough spot. This is a company that is oriented around kind of protecting privacy and personal data and brand advertising. And that's not where the world is right now. It's why performance advertising is so important. It's why they've been working on this for the past year. I'm just not entirely sure that Snap has all that they need to have at this point to really be successful over the longer term in this context. I guess we'll find out over the next couple of quarters, but this is a pretty good start to the year for sure.
It's been a comeback story before. We'll have to see if it is again. Scott Kessler, thank you.